Hello, and welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is author Nathaniel Popkin. We're going to be talking to him about his book, Partly Strong, Partly Broken. Nathaniel, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Hey, Paul, it's great to be here.
Well, thank you. It's great to have you here as well. So, for those who are familiar with the program, we like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched lately, if we liked it or we despised it or don't want to have anything to do with it or just indifferent to it. I will go first just to give Nathaniel a few minutes to collect his thoughts. Didn't really get a chance to watch much this week, but it came out on Amazon last week, and I was already looking forward to this, but it was very satisfying to see what a great job they did in producing it, and that is the program called Spider Noir. So basically, they take Spider-Man, the character of Spider-Man, put it into 1930s New York, but it's not Peter Parker. It's another character named Ben Reilly, and that character is played by Nicolas Cage. And it's a lot of fun. You can tell the people who made it love like that era of noir films, black and white, detective, hard-boiled stuff, and a lot of shady characters, and just add some Spider-Man elements into it. Villains with powers and web spinners and all that kind of fun stuff. I believe it is 8 episodes long, but we only watched the first two so as not to overindulge. And looking forward to spacing them out, maybe two at a time, possibly three if we're feeling very adventurous. But we really enjoyed it. And even if you're not a big Spider-Man fan, if you have an appreciation of noir films and that like do a hard-boiled detective type of stuff, I think you'll really enjoy it. That is pretty much it on my end. So I'm going to throw it to Nathaniel. Anything good or not so good that you've been reading or watching lately?
Yeah, Paul, I guess this explains why I just saw there was a profile of Nicolas Cage in the New Yorker.
Ah,
I think in this week's magazine, I guess that's why. It sounds like a great show. Just being transported back to 1930s New York sounds awesome. And of course, the noir element that is very intriguing. So I will get there. I struggle in my life. I struggle to like settle into shows. I
hmm.
prefer to watch movies, but I recently, my wife and I have been watching a Spanish show on Mubi. It's called The New Year's, Los Años Nuevos, and basically it's the story of two young people. They actually are 30 years old when the show starts, so it's New Year's evening, Eve day in that realm. Each episode is a year for 10 years. It starts chronologically in um 2015 as the New Year's 2015, and then it goes forward all the way to New Year's 2024.
Hmm.
We haven't gotten all the way through yet, but it's Anna and Oscar, and they have extraordinarily well developed characters that really live on the screen, and they go through a tumultuous in and out relationship across, I think we've seen 6 or 7 episodes. And what I love about the show is the extraordinary realism, the way the camera tracks, say, a party room where a whole bunch of people are sitting around a table drinking, doing drugs and talking, like it gets you right in there, and it's extraordinary at conveying that feeling. Both actors are absolutely captivating to watch on the screen. You never want to stop watching them. But also then there's weirdness that like and weirdness that doesn't take you out of the story, just lets you breathe for a second. Um, so things that shouldn't be happening are happening, or are they really? Things like that. So that's what I'm really enjoying right now, Los Años Nuevos. You should check it out if you can.
Okay, just one quick question. So, when you say, without going into like spoiler territory, so when you say weirdness happens, I mean, my immediate thought is like, well, are we like venturing into X-Files territory type of thing, or is it like a haunted house type of thing? I mean, if you don't want to give too much away, I totally get that, but maybe like an inkling of what it is, what the weirdness
It's
refers to.
it's just like, so there is a repeated thing that happens, which is there's a, a couple, they're not the main characters, that are put on the screen in a portrait style, portrait photography style, but they're live and it's alive and they're smiling or giggling or holding hands. And they might be old, they might be young. They're tangential to the story, but every episode a couple appears in it. It sort of situates you. Oh, that's what this is about. It's about a couple. Um, but then you get to see this wide range of couples. Then there might be things like you know, there's no explanation, which I love, right? So you're in a scene and then all of a sudden something is happening that doesn't make sense. And maybe it's real and maybe it's not. Maybe it's in the character's imagination, maybe it's not. And you just go with it. And that to me deepens your attachment while watching. So it's not weird. It may not be weird like even Spider-Man, but what it does is it relieves the burden of the hyper realism of the show.
Okay, I one last question. When you say like something happens, is it kind of like a setup and payoff thing, like something that happens in maybe like episode two? We see that the results of that somewhere down the line, like episode four or episode five.
Oh, they're leaving little
There's a lot of
little
breadcrumbs.
nuggets all along.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, you get, and it also allows you to be a very observant viewer. Like if it's it has a special quality of helping you see what to see
Hmm.
without explaining anything or being expository. There's no expository dialogue, which I particularly appreciate.
Sure.
And yet it's leading you to kind of wait for certain things, but things might happen that you absolutely do not expect.
Hmm.
And you kind of can't believe they are, but they're happening in the shoes of the characters, and that makes it real. And also the settings of various European cities is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Um, just to see the way the camera uses that milieu.
Okay, that sounds great. I also realized right after I finished talking about this Spider Noir, one of the probably the best features of about it is that when you go to watch it on Amazon, it gives you the option: do you want to watch it in color or do you want to watch it in gorgeous black and white? So of course we opted for the black and white, and they did a phenomenal job. The cinematography and the camera work is just great. So again, if
I
that
like
doesn't draw
that.
you in even more,
Yeah. All
all
right,
right.
that's cool.
Okay, well, fantastic. We're going to be talking today again, Nathaniel Popkin, about his book, Partly Strong, Partly Broken. What I like to do is I like to read the About the Author section because we're going to be talking about you for the time being. Partly Strong, Partly Broken is Nathaniel Popkin's fourth novel and eighth book. He is also the co-editor of the anthology Who Will Speak for America. He has written often about the intersections of Jewish ideals and lived realities. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Tablet, and Gulf Coast, among other publications. So, Nathaniel, let's talk a little bit about you. What I like to ask the guest is, like, what's your origin story? Were you always a writer, like, even from a young age? Were you a voracious reader? What is it that started you on the path to being a writer?
I think I was that prototypical kid who struggled to always fit in, who felt himself apart, who learned to observe carefully, who was sensitive to things and hurts and other kids' meannesses. And I think that set me on the road. I also was a voracious reader. I did receive a typewriter from my grandparents, and I think I was 7, but that doesn't it may have been before that because I recall my grandfather being alive and he died when I was 7, or right before my 8th birthday. So, but it was this yellow, plastic yellow typewriter, which I can vividly remember laying on the floor of the porch of my grandparents' house, you know, typing away. And so, no, but then, and then I didn't go down that path. I, I found myself very attached to the narrative of cities, American cities, and I really learned American urban history, and I participated in things like community and economic development, with organizations and government agencies and institutions. And I really got into all of that. I got into the environmental movement. And then a book idea arrived to me, and it became my first book called Song of the City, which was published 7,000 years ago. Um, uh, and that just it falsely convinced me that I knew how to write, and that led me through the next 7,000 years of learning to write
Okay.
and developing into that person who maybe I was meant to be when I was a little kid.
Okay, I totally understand that. So I was looking through your catalog of all the books that you've written and published, and I have to say your work really spans a wide variety of topics and genres. So that, of course, raises the question. I mean, how do you to decide what to write? Is it just kind of like, oh, I feel like writing, fill in the blank today, or maybe something inspires you, or you see something and you realize, oh, that would make a great subject for a book, and then you just dive into the research or start putting the story together. I mean, what is it that what is the starting point for you?
Paul, I would say it's a little like ineffable, the process of how an idea emerges. And you're right, my work spans observing the city to reflecting on environmental crisis, ecological crisis, and thinking about how to think or talk about that, which we really struggle to do, to this latest novel, which is really diving into the explosive issue, particularly within Jewish communities, but also within American life at large, which is conflict over people, how the people think and talk about Israel and Palestine, and their strongly held beliefs about that. And it's just very strange how things brew. A lot of things brew for me by reading. So I, or, and then they sit and then they stew. So now I'm using these almost cauldron-like
Hmm.
images, like I'm a witch, but it's not true. But it's like it's a very strange, and I have a lot of novels in the drawer, things I've tried that haven't been successful. You have to do two things at once almost. You have to be top down, like you have to say, I want to do this and have a clear concept. And at the same time remain wildly open because whatever that concept is when you start is not what the book is going to be when you end. And so for me, there's a feeling, there's an urge, there's an obsession, and I have multiple ones like a lot of artists, and they somehow combine. I can I can say with this novel, I was walking down the street thinking to myself, I just come back from an artist residency in Oaxaca, Mexico, and for the first time going to one of those, I didn't write anything. I just took notes. It still freaked me out. I wasn't prepared to do such a thing. And I came home and I said to myself while walking down the street, you're never going to have another idea for a novel again.
Hmm.
And almost immediately, the idea for this came to me.
Okay, well that is a great lead-in. Again, the book is partly strong, partly broken. What I like to use the metaphor of for screenwriters, it's the elevator pitch. Here, what's your story in 5 seconds? But for authors, it could get slightly more detailed. So call it the cocktail party pitch. You're there and someone says, "Hey, Nathaniel, tell me about this book you wrote, partly strong, partly broken. And what is it about?" And you would say,
It's about the tensions that are boiling over uh, in within Jewish communities over Israel and Palestine that have been boiling over for a very long time, and I guess overcame the pot since October 7th, but much more than that. It's a meditation, it's an evocation on American society, the fragility of community, the fragility of the hope and dreams for a multi-ethnic, multiracial, multi-faith approach to American life, a pluralistic American life, and an observation on the ways that we as citizens in a democracy can become divided by issues that are also inside of us and outside of us, the ways that we attach to things, the ways that we attach to our beliefs rather necessarily than to the evidence we see in front of our eyes, how all of these things play out in real time in present day America in a very specific way. This is a book about the rupturing of Jewish community life and multi-faith community life that had a lot of people have experienced since October 7th, but that was happening before it. The novel takes place in the month before October 7th, 2023, and it's about a rabbi, a kind of willful, idealistic, giving, but also, well, she's willful, she's
Hmm.
attached to her own ego. Uh, she's trying to hold her community together. She's trying to keep alive the dream of her multi-faith coalition, and there are a lot of challenges along the way.
Yeah, oh, they're very much so. I also want to eventually get to the part about that it's a month before October 7th, which I thought was a great way to present it. But before that, I have to say that the book really resonated very strongly with me because it felt very reminiscent of how I grew up. Because I grew up in South Jersey in a Jewish community, and the synagogue slash congregation seemed very reminiscent of what my family synagogue was like. And there, you don't go into specific about where. I know it's in New Jersey, but you don't specify a town. I'm going to assume that it is in somewhere in the northern part of the state because the rabbi talks about going into Manhattan, but she never talked about going into Philadelphia or down to the shore. I have to. I guess my first thought was there a lot of, I guess we call it field research. So for you to kind of capture the elements of which there are many of, I guess we call it synagogue culture, as part of the story.
It's a really funny question because I'm a kind of person. Yeah, so it takes place in a New Jersey synagogue, more in the New York part of New Jersey than the Philly part of New Jersey. When she does go to when the rabbi goes to the shore for a day, she goes to Asbury Park. Um, and she goes into Manhattan one time. So yes, it's North Jersey. It's a fictional place, a
Hmm.
fictional um, congregation, Temple Beth Israel. Uh, yes, I am sort of famously allergic to synagogue as a Jew who did get bar mitzvahed in a New
Hmm.
Jersey synagogue growing up in Central Jersey, which may or may not exist depending on what you
Hmm.
think. But uh, I am not a synagogue goer. I have never found myself invested in that. I don't feel right when I'm practicing religion in that way. It doesn't resonate with me. It's been a struggle for me to take part. When I do take part, it's a bit of a struggle. At the same time, I think I absorbed, maybe because of the friction I was feeling, that it's never come easy for me to go. And when I do go, I'm like on a heightened state of something. So I've observed and I've absorbed growing up, which is a million years ago. And um, when our kids who got bar and bat mitzvahed here in a synagogue in Philadelphia, uh, sort of going along the journey with them and being present there, I did absorb a lot. And I also, this is what happens to writers. Uh, there's just a sixth sense or an ear or something that there's a sensitivity that you need to have. And that's what I brought to this novel was, I guess, some kind of sensitivity that I was able, I hope, and the reader will tell me, to transform into something worth spending time with.
Okay, I totally get that. I also realized that as I was reading it, A majority of the book is told from the perspective of I guess we'd call her the main character, Rabbi Adina. But then maybe about three-quarters of the way through, there's a shift that all like it's told in chapters, and then all of a sudden we shift from Rabbi Adina to several of the supporting characters. And I just thought that was a very interesting approach. At why are we taking the focus off of this one character to suddenly have like a little exploration with this one side character? And I was just curious, like why that approach as opposed to just having it scattered throughout the whole thing, but it's Adina, 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 this other person, this other person, this other person, back to Adina.
Well, it could be a little bit like what I was noticing on that Spanish television series, where you need something to be a mere like a to to give you something in relief so that you can then see what you're trying to that that the author wants you to see more clearly. And maybe that's what I'm doing. I think also there is some point of view from other characters earlier on. You get a taste of some of them,
Mm,
particularly the two young people, the president of the synagogue, Stanley, a little bit, um, Deborah, the administrator of the synagogue, and some other people, Imam Abdul in the Multi-Faith Coalition. There are these characters that they're present, but what happens in the real world of someone who's trying to hold and keep control and hold on to something that she feels so dear and wants to see this beautiful thing continue into the future, the beautiful thing that she sees as the potential of her religious community and her congregation. She starts to, it really is falling apart around her in
mm,
many multiple ways. And that's when you see the focus switch a little bit to the reasons why things are falling apart. And when you feel something losing control, it's the other things that are taking over control. And that at a metaphorical level or a novelistic structural level is what's happening here. The other people, and they're not always in agreement, and there's definitely opposing viewpoints and opposing perspectives. They're taking over control from her, and she is struggling to like grasp on.
Well, I was going to say, so I already had two questions. You pretty much are setting it up for me to approach either. So I'm going to stick with the character-based one. So again, while Rabbi Adina is our primary focus, as you've alluded to, there is a huge supporting cast. It's almost like the first third of the book is introducing characters, and a lot of them, in my opinion, they really come across not only as very three-dimensional, but they're very believable and realistic. They come across as actual people, not caricatures, and not one-dimensional. Like that's what this person is about, and that's all they are. What was your process for putting all of these characters together, but also you are able to give them each their own personality? I mean, they were like as you said, there's Deborah, and then there's Stanley, and I think it's Audrey was another character.
There's Trudy.
Trudy,
Yeah. Yep.
it was just that with only they're not the dominant characters in the scenes, but they are there and they have an impact on a lot of the events of the story. But they seem very realistic, like they're authentic kind of people. So how were you able to develop them and incorporate all of that into the story?
It's such an important question. And I think it's helpful for writers to talk about this process because, of course, it's one of the great challenges of writing a novel is not writing cartoons,
Mm,
not writing trope, not writing type, but putting living and breathing beings on the page so that the reader can really attach to them and get carried away with them and love them and or hate them or whatever it is, but react to something that's real. And so I would say a couple things here. One, um, I wrote this novel in 2023, the first version of it, finished it. The first date I have on my computer of this novel is May 2nd, 2023. So there was a completed draft by then. I started in March. So it's very quickly got drafted. Started went through a couple rounds of revisions with my writers group and then started to send it out in the early fall of 23. And then October 7th happened and realized that the baseline reality of the story had shifted drastically, dramatically, in a way that forced me to take this story more seriously and to wait a minute. But I mean, I was sort of stuck, right? I had already written something that I think was pretty good. Most of these characters were in it. The rabbi was less of the central character in the original version. But then this rupture happened in real life, and all of a sudden the book, well, the stakes got higher, let's just
Hmm.
say, right? So, but then I was faced with, okay, well, how do I do this? And I had writer friends tell me, you got to write it past October 7th. We have to see this carry towards the present. You have to be the one to write about what's happening now. And another writer friend and a few other people said, no, you can't do that. We don't know how this is going to turn out. At the same time, what happened immediately in the post October 7th period and in the months that followed, from devastating act to then horrifying response, to put it lightly, um, was that people attached to their opinions in ways that were hard to even imagine.
Hmm.
And people became strident in a way that they felt they had to, in the way that they were expressing their views. But as anyone who expresses something in a moment like that, you become a little bit cartoonish. And I didn't want to see that happen to my characters. So that's why I end the novel at midnight on October 7th, 2023, when news is just trickling in.
Hmm.
And that, I don't know if that's a spoiler alert, but it's it um the you're reading and you're seeing time count down to October 7th, and the characters don't know what's coming. And I felt that that was a really useful tension. So now I'm not going to create cartoons, but I had to rewrite the novel, and that's where the characters got deeper. That's where the characters started demonstrating to me who they really were, like spend more time with them, have them act, see what they do with a certain scene, rewrite that scene. I saw that the rabbi in the beginning of the novel really liked to give gifts. She brought back gifts for Fami, the Syrian refugee girl who she and her mother, the rabbi and the congregation, had helped resettle in 2015. And she had brought back a Hamsa for Fami and a Hamsa necklace to share with one of her high school students within the congregation, Celia. So she had all these gifts of spices, she had brought all these gifts, and it only later occurred to me that she's a giving person. She's doing this because that's what she's motivated by. And so I just let myself learn about the characters. All of them came pretty easily to me in terms of being real 360, three-dimensional, dynamic people. Only a couple did I struggle with. Trudy, I struggled with because she was a bit of a type to start out with, and I had to soften her edges, and I had to imagine her happy, and I had to imagine her in love, and things like that, which didn't seem obvious to me in the first or even second draft.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You alluded to this before, and that the story of the whole book is set in the month before October 7th, and with each chapter almost pretty much a day as it counts down. So I'm curious, like, why you decided to have it be a month as opposed to 6 months. I mean, was it just kind of that because I was wondering if it was like the right amount of time to keep adding like every day the pressure clicks up a notch. And like we started at base level and just once a day for 30 days, then to the boiling point of October 7th. I was just curious, like what was the reasoning behind, okay, I think a month before October 7th is the perfect time frame.
I have no idea, Paul.
Okay.
Uh, um, yeah,
Okay, well, let me
I
rephrase
would
it.
say
So so
I
so
would
but let me
say
say let me
yeah,
try this one. Before when
okay.
your first draft, before you went back and totally redid it, was it also set in a month or I guess October 7th hadn't happened yet. So was that just a more I don't want to call it sprawling, but was it a more lengthy time frame?
It was more sprawling, I think. But I think one thing happened was the first version I started the the day returning back to work after Labor Day. That's where I had it. And so I imagine the same, I just stayed with that beginning time. And really what happens when you obviously a novel, you know, it's a it's this little thing here, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
it's
Yes,
just
this book right here.
this one. But I mean, it's just a thing. It's a small thing. And so it concentrates. And I think the month is concentrating a little bit of reality into a form that's digestible. But, and in terms of doing a kind of like, it's not quite day by day,
Hmm.
but it's something like that as the clock is ticking down towards October 7th to make that process really matter for the reader. I think it did need that concentration. And I really liked the novel starts right after Labor Day. The rabbi is returning from being in Israel for a few weeks. She participates in those enormous street protests that were happening. She comes home. The high holidays are coming. She's filled with appreciation and love. She's all these gifts. She's ready to get going. This is prime time for her in the course of her year. And I guess it just sort of sets things up a little bit more specifically and more precisely.
Okay, I was going to say she's a lot more optimistic about things when she comes back, and it's almost like every day that she endures, it just chips away at a little bit about it. But again, we don't want to get too spoilery about it. I also wanted to say that a key part of any good story is conflict, and this book has it in spades. Without, again, going into spoilers, each chapter turns things up. How much plotting and organizing or even outlining did that require? I mean, because you said you had an earlier version and then you went back and retooled it. Did that have a drastic impact on the way the story played out, or did you just to say, okay, I just got to start over from scratch. I've got the characters, I got the scenario, and just went to town with it.
I had to start over from scratch in a lot of ways, and it really benefited the book a
Hmm.
lot to do that. And I recommend it to anyone who's writing anything, like write it and then start over. And that's painful to believe that you can do that, but actually it will work out. And I myself would never listen to that advice until having kind of done. Um, The second thing I would say is that you asked me before if I had, how did I understand and learn in synagogue life? I don't think I do that well, but or I don't know where I got it from, but I did have to learn liturgy. I had to learn the Jewish calendar, and I had to align the story of the novel with that Jewish calendar because the calendar is so important, especially in the life of a congregation. It's
Hmm.
not quite as important to a regular religious person. I mean, it depends who you are and how you practice if you do. In the life of a congregation, of a synagogue, of a rabbi, of the administrator, the calendar is just the most important thing. So I had to attach and align this story with that calendar. And a million times within this, as I was writing, I had Torah calendar of what readings, the liturgy, the holidays. I had to keep that all really present of mind. and just keep aligning and keep learning about what does this mean? What does that mean? So it really, for me, was a great journey, and a deepening of understanding and learning.
Okay, did you was your like writing space like was one wall just like index cards, rows and rows taped up, like
It
just you moving things around. Okay, this would work better here. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, Rosh Hashanah, and then I got 8 days later is Yom Kippur, and I've got to make sure everything lines up and all the ducks are in a row, so to speak.
it was just like that. Not without the index cards. It was on my screen.
Hmm.
But yeah, I had to keep that straight, and I didn't always. Actually, I had a notebook. Now that I'm remembering, where is that notebook? It's been long put away, but I had a notebook where I had all the dates listed out, and I just would keep going back to that. And then, you know, I have to talk about the role of the editor. So I have a wonderful editor. We've been working together for a long time, and she probably understands me as a writer better than I do. And we got to the point in the process of working together where she could be like, you need another scene with this character to draw out their narrative arc, to make sure that arc has a real arc. And our her understanding of the text, my trust in her, and and her help in me being able to understand those characters was so high that I was able, she asked me to like write a new chapter, put it here, and I could almost do it like that because she gave me the tools to be able to do that. So like the editor author relationship is so vital here. It's so integral. It went through multiple phases from pre-developmental to just sections and drafts to developmental to line editing and all the way just a magnificent process. And there would be no novel without that.
Wow, that I mean, I have heard that about a lot of editors that a solid editor will help make your project that much better. Uh, Curious that did any of your editors' suggestions, was there initial pushback from you? Like you thought, no, that's not going to work, and then you thought, oh, you know what? They're right. If I move this around or I insert this extra chapter expanding on this character, that'll make it that much better.
Yeah, there probably are a bunch of examples like that. I had to write a new first chapter uh, to situate the book a little bit. I don't know, to 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 push the novel off. And I had envisioned the novel rushing in,
Hmm.
but this other idea that was brought to me was to push it off and like out of a starting gate, right? So I went with that, and I did have to write a new first chapter whereby the old first chapter, which was the rushing in, became chapter two.
Hmm.
And so, you just learn so much in doing it. Like I don't even know what to say. It's a wonderful art. The creative process comes so much from within. Some of it's hard to point,
Hmm.
hard to say what it is exactly where it comes from, but this novel particularly exists, but it doesn't exist but for the community that helped create it.
Yeah,
And
I was going to say that with every project that you take on, that any writer takes on, everyone basically hitting the reset button when you start because you don't know. Sometimes the words just come, and some days you're just sitting there for hours, like, oh, what's the word that I'm looking for? What is it that I'm trying to say?
I mean, like I said, I never thought I was going to I never thought I was going to have an idea for another novel again. And then the idea came, but then, we're all part of a bigger consciousness, and we're fools to think that we're outside of that. When we plug into that bigger consciousness and we tap into that, then we can make something for everyone, right? And
Hmm.
that I think is the special sauce here.
Okay, I'm more than familiar with that phrase. One of the things, one of the things I also wanted to ask you. Judaism is the primary religion that's focused on over the course of the story, but you also mentioned that Rabbi Dina is part of this multi-faith coalition. So religion and how it's practiced, not just by Judaism, that it does play a really significant role in the story. So, how did you determine how much or how little to include? Were there any moments that you were thinking, okay, and I don't need to go into that much detail, or was it, or maybe you or your editor said, okay, that's good, that's a good starting point. You need to expand on that a little bit.
I really struggled with this, both on the Jewish side and on the multi-faith side, which was to say, okay, you're writing about a rabbi, she knows a lot, and she's excited by all that she knows, right? And so how do you have her, the title comes from the book of Daniel. So, and she that comes out of a conversation she's having with this other character, Deborah. How do you do that in a way that's not expository, that's not boring, that that brings it to life, but it's about a biblical passage?
Hmm.
How do you like create a scene with this multi-faith coalition? You have a Presbyterian minister, you have a AME pastor, you have a Hindu priest, you have a Catholic priest, you have um, who am I forgetting?
There's another rabbi.
There's another rabbi, Reconstructionist rabbi. There's the Imam Abdul, and there's a shared kind of from actually there was a shared class identity that they had because clergy are not well paid.
Hmm.
So she was exotic for having just traveled to Israel in their eyes because of a kind of slight and very subtle class consciousness. But also, how do you convey that they're sitting around a table, they're doing their regular monthly multi-faith coalition meeting, and it's a coalition that's created to for reasons of fighting social justice fights, as a lot of these exist around the country. There's a lot of them that became challenged because of October 7th and its aftermaths in Gaza. And um, how does that even work? Who are these people? How do they talk? How do they think? I really struggled with that. I did have to learn some things. But I do think that a lot of this is about America. America is an oddly religious country, and people do practice their religions, and freedom of religion, which came to life here in my city of Philadelphia, really, and was made into something tangible in the American experience here. I think I take it extra seriously, and so that's kind of the basis for all of this, you know? There's a
Okay.
practice of religion, and there's a possibility for convergence too.
Hmm. Yeah,
And I am not a religious person at all.
That's okay. I was curious. So was the idea or the concept of the multi-faith coalition, was that part of the story from the beginning, or was that something that came in for the, I guess, for the revised drafts?
No, that was there from the beginning. It, however, got carried by as in the revised drafts as the characters of Fahmy, the Syrian girl who was um, the subject of an assault, her mother Marwan, her um, the Imam Abdul, Imam's sister Mariam, and that the context for all of that began to really take come to life. And there's also in the Israeli context, the rabbi has a long ago but still very dear in the heart partner, lover named Sana, who she met in Israel, who lives in Haifa, who is Palestinian Israeli, and very fraught and conflicted in her identity and her sense of who she is. And Adina, coming back from her vacation in Israel, had just spent time with Sana. So it's very, all of these similarities and differences are bubbling up inside her heart as the novel opens. Yeah,
Okay,
she's
yeah.
struggling with that.
Okay. No, yeah, I was curious because I thought it was a great touch to it because it not only did it was there the main focus on the Judaism, but also all these different perspectives from different religions, and also her connection with all of these other clergy. That sometimes she like runs into the like I think she runs into the other rabbi at the supermarket or something like that, and it's an interesting situation because you don't usually expect to see them quotes unquotes out in the wild like that.
And one of the things I try to do with this, and I don't know if I do it successfully, but is show the range of Jewishness, of ways of being Jewish in America in the present day. It's a wide-ranging thing, and Jews have been in conflict with each other about what it means to be a Jew and be a Jew in America since Jewish people started coming here. Um, An earlier novel of mine is about an anarchist in the late 19th century who, on Yom Kippur, intentionally sets up his peddler stand in front of the synagogue to mess with, to to show contempt for the religious men inside the synagogue and to draw them into conflict, like physical conflict, which is what happens out on the street. And so, there's always this wide range of ways of practicing and being a Jewish person that I think we probably all are aware of.
Yeah, yeah, that is one thing I noticed that it's almost even within the confines of the congregation that there are different levels of people and how they celebrate or at least acknowledge their Jewish identity. So for some people it's almost very casual and some are very diehard about it. Some are just so dedicated to about it. And it seemed I think that added to the realism of what about what a congregation would be like.
And a lot of that is about varying and differentiating ideas and beliefs about Israel, Israel's right to exist, the so-called Zionist project, or different instincts and realities within the Jewish world, the Bund, or ways of being Jewish that are more political or less political, either in a left or right-wing manner. Um, and I think we're seeing it since October 7th, and really since about 2025, we've really seen the blossoming and the more obvious ways in which Jews are converging and diverging in their beliefs. There are new books out that explore different ways of being Jewish. Certainly a rise in how to be a non-Zionist Jew. There are people still very attached to, even the word Zionism or Zionist. If you like do one of those things where you can see the etymology and how it was used, wasn't being used that much before 2023. It was, but not very much. Now, if you Googled its usage, the numbers would be exponential since 2023.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, so again, Nathaniel Popkin, and your book, Partly Strong, Partly Broken. What has been the feedback on the book? I'm very curious to know, especially have you heard from people within the religious community, especially rabbis, but also non-Jewish clergy?
That's a great question. I haven't really gotten a response from non-Jewish clergy, though I really would love to see that. And one of the one of the internal struggles or conflicts here is this a Jewish book or is this not a Jewish book? And I would like to say it's not just a Jewish book, right? It's a book for everyone who cares about America in the present day or just likes to read. And the feedback I have gotten, startlingly realistic is what the Jewish Daily Forward said. And I think that people see the novel works as a mirror. Fiction is a mirror on real life, a distorted mirror, a distant mirror, whatever metaphors you want to use, but it's a mirror This one I think is a pretty active mirror. And the feedback I've gotten is yes, to see themselves, to feel their own tensions and struggles and conflicts that a lot of people have experienced personally in the last few years. They see it on the page. So it's nice to write a book and to get nice comments back. And I really appreciate that people are seeing themselves in the novel. I am doing an event a week next week on Tuesday, um, in a synagogue with a rabbi, having a panel discussion with the rabbi. So we'll see how that goes. I I don't know. I'm a little scared.
Oh, I'm sure it will go great. Okay, so you now this book is out now, and you're getting the feedback on it. So what is up next? Is it something more fictional or something more nonfiction?
Yeah, what's up next? I have a bunch of other projects that are in history and documentary film, sorry. And and we have a book, a political, not political, public history project book that's coming out later this year called Philadelphia in Color, 1950 to 1990. It's a book of photography.
Hmm.
It's a portrait of the city during the period of American urban decline that sort of tells a very different story than that. So I'm really excited about that. I am reading. I am giving myself a little space to read, and it's always through reading that new ideas for fiction and novels come to me. So I'm presently reading this novel by Alvaro Enrique, who is a Mexican, he lives in New York City. He's a Mexican writer. It's called Now I Surrender. I realize it's hard to see the title, but this guy wrote an amazing book that was translated into English called You Dreamed of Empires. It was published last year, I think. And it sort of reimagines the conquest of Montezuma and Cortez. And it's just an amazing sort of history, weird, far history book. I loved it. So I bought this one and I'm reading it slowly, and it's starting to do something which is what reading does to me, to like light little fires inside there. Kindling, let's call it. Kindling is happening.
It's some kindling. That's great. Nathaniel, I want to ask you. I like to ask the guests, what is your advice for writers? Not necessarily about writing this specific kind of story, but writing overall. But maybe someone does have a story that's similar or, I guess, comparable to what you have created. What advice would you give them? I mean, there's, it's not going to write itself. You have to put in the work. But I mean, to take it a little bit beyond that.
Well, it is such a difficult time to do anything creative in this moment because of AI and the economy and social pressures. But of course, it's also a great time to identify more with the humanness inside of you, with your own obsessions and your own particular way of seeing the world. There's only one you, but you, right? And like, man, that's as an artist, that's truly all that matters. And that sort of sounds like it's the opposite of like tap into the consciousness, but both are true at the same time. And so you have to own the struggle. You have to know it is a struggle. It's really painful to live in this country which does not take art very seriously, but have to take yourself seriously in order to produce work that matters. That's a difficult thing to work out. And I just say stay with the trouble.
Stay with the trouble. That is a great way to end things. Nathaniel, thank you so much for being here today. Again, the book is partly strong, partly broken. Nathaniel, where can people find out more about you and your works online, a website or social media platforms that you're on?
Yeah, I have a website. You can find it easily. I write on Substack. My Substack channel, what is it called? I don't know. It's called 2 Feet on the Ground. Um, and I can also be found on Instagram. But I do write I do write on Substack, and I enjoy the platform for being able to go a little bit more deeply into things. Yeah,
Okay. So I have the website as nathanielpopkin.net. And for Instagram, it is nathaniel.popkin.
that is right. I don't know why. Mistake on my part.
That's
Who
okay.
knows?
Just in case, just in case. Always helps to cover all bases. Nathaniel, thank you so much for being here today. This was a fantastic and fascinating conversation.
I loved it, Paul. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the invitation to be here with you. Bi-coastal interview. I love that. So
That's
have a great
right.
rest of your day.
Nathaniel's in Philadelphia. I'm in San Francisco, and that definitely a bi-coastal conversation. Again, thank you, Nathaniel, for being here, and viewers and listeners. If you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Newcomers always welcome. The audio theme music by Mark Gunyon, and for my social media, you can check out my screenwriting blog at maximumz.blog. This show is on Blue Sky and Instagram at podcast CWL, and I'm also on Blue Sky and Instagram, but that is at Pez Screenwriting, just like the candy. You can check out my Go Ahead and Ask books. Those are the ones on Amazon about screenwriting and pie. And like I said, that's Nathaniel. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.